And this bright light of ours, stories from the voting rights fight. And of course, we're talking to author and civil rights activist Maria Gitin today, our very special guest, and the new book that chronicles some very turbulent times in the history of our nation, but a story also about those who were ready to be a warrior in a time that was very difficult. And Maria, you came to Alabama from California after your training in Atlanta, and then of course arriving in Wilcox County. That's where we left off. What was it like initially there in Camden, and as you began the struggle to help folks register to vote, to get the right to exercise their vote?
Well, the very first night we were there, and the book actually opens with this story, but rather than read it, I'll tell a more condensed version. We were snuck into a black Baptist, African-American Baptist church in the middle of the night and told to go to sleep on the bare pews, which we tried to do. And in a little while, around 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., there were feet outside and truck doors, and the next thing there were shots around the church, and it was the Klan had arrived to let us know that we were definitely not welcome there. And at that point I rolled under a church pew, and there was another white kid from California, and he had already been there since the Selma March, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, probably it's just some crackers trying to scare us."
Oh, goodness.
And I said, "Well, it's working on me." And then he said, "Welcome to Wilcox County, that's all." And so we ended up being boyfriend and girlfriend that summer, but that's how we met, under the church pew.
Under the pew. What was that fear like? What were you feeling? What was it like?
I was genuinely afraid much of the time. There was that kind of excitement I think you have of knowing. Dr. King made it clear to us that we were part of history. He said, "Students are where history is being made." That was one of his statements to us when we were in Atlanta. And we knew that we might die. And I was 19 years old, I would write these letters. Can you imagine being a parent? "Well, you know, they may kill us, but they can't kill the spirit of the movement." So we were very idealistic. We were afraid, but we were absolutely filled with belief in the power of nonviolent love. And I really personally thought it would be a little bit like in The Wizard of Oz, where if we just loved the racists enough, all their resistance would just melt away, right, and they would just embrace us.
It took a little while, right? It took a little while.
It took a little while, yes, indeed.
Had you heard about some of the stories? Because the civil rights struggle was one of all Americans coming together to be a part of making this happen. And there were several white Americans, both male and female, who lost their lives in this struggle because some of them were targeted by the Klan and, right, other groups who were not wanting this change to happen. Had you heard about that? Did you have any fear about this? Because they did kill a woman.
Yes, I certainly was aware, and they told us at the trainings about Viola Luizzo being killed, right, outside Montgomery, about James Reeb being shot along with other seminarians who were, yes, injured in Selma. And then, of course, Jimmy Lee Jackson from Marion, who was the tragic death that stimulated the march that became Bloody Sunday when the students and others were attacked. So I was very aware of that, and not only that, they gave us a pamphlet at the orientation that said that Alabama is where murder on Negroes, which was the term of respect at the, right, time, is permitted by law. That Alabama is the state where murder of Negroes, mm-hmm, is permitted. And it had a list of 13 civil rights workers who had been murdered in Alabama just in the last 2 years.
Right. And then if you were associated with them, right, you are also at risk of right, paying the ultimate price there. So you got things going in Camden County, and of course at that first greeting on that Sunday night at the church, what happened next? How did you proceed? And one of the most difficult parts of the task was helping encourage people to exercise that right, to get over their fear of, right, being black and African American and Negro in the Deep South.
Right. And we had all this training and various strategies, but basically we'd go out in pairs with one local young person who was African American. And this past Sunday at the Selma Jubilee, just a sidebar, 3 of the young men from the Lawson family of Boiling Springs, who I hadn't seen since they were 2, 13, and 16 respectively, who had walked with me and whose house I had taken meals at, came and marched with us in the Selma Jubilee. So there were local people, and the youth really looked up to us, of course, because we were college kids, we were white, we were from the North, and because for many of them, they said they had never had been on an equal footing before. We would go around, and even though I had more fancy spiels, the best one was to knock on the door, and when they came to the door and looked in horror at a white teenager and an even younger black youth, I'd say, "Dr. King sent me to help you find your freedom." That was our opening line. You know, you have to have your elevator speech.
And how was it received?
Variously. Skeptically, "You're most welcome, young lady, come on in." One lady said, "You know, we've never had a white person in our house before except when the sheriff and his goons came to break everything up. So you are most welcome." We've had people say, "Please get away, don't bring harm to me," slam the door, every kind of reaction. But many, many people, even before this period of time was between Bloody Sunday and before the Voting Rights Act passed in August. So it was just this period of 8-10 weeks when people without the federal protections were brave enough to go to the courthouse. So we were the foot soldiers out getting them to sign up, and then we would tell them, "Meet over at Mrs. Angion's, Major John will pick you up, Dan Harrell will give you a ride, this is the arrangements to make." And then every time I saw somebody who I'd spoken to get in one of those cars to go down into the courthouse in Camden, I just felt we're doing the right thing. And so that really, their courage gave me courage.
Yeah, you're touching me now all these years later. Right, we thank you so much. We've been speaking with author and civil rights activist Maria Gitin. Please take advantage of reaching out to find out more information about the book called This Bright Light of Ours, Stories from the Voting Rights Fight. Thanks for joining us today on Speak Up. We'll see you next time.